Okay, last time we potted, and that should be dropping here in the next few days, got lively, and I loved it. So I've been thinking, how do we get lively again? I've been thinking about this ever since because I want to poke the bear a little.
My ring's on here, so I can get off. Okay.
And so I'm going to straight up just go into it with, and how they're going to name this particular pod, because Reed does the downs on this. We're going to name it DO, like D-O, due process, and then D-U-E, because I need to help him spell, is really due process. And we're going to go over that because I've had a lifetime of telling, or, a long time, 20 plus years of telling those that are in our country illegally that immigration system is like the moon, and the state government is like the earth. They don't talk to each other. It's like the Martian and the Bugs Bunny movies. They're not talking to each other. And so one does lead to the other. And so back in law school, so I started thinking, back in law school, how do we best teach somebody about due process that you are concerned about? And I am looking at this thing as an observer, kind of going back and forth, wondering, I get where your concerns are with due process. And when I use the words limited due process, I probably shouldn't have done so because I don't think it's that. I think it's worse than that. I think there is none. Like, it's our system. And our system does not provide due process to those that come in to our country illegally.
Oh, on the
it is
immigration
not
side.
there. And so the second we start pretending it is, well, that's what we've done. We've baked it up. It's baked into the cake. So it's a bundle of sticks. So I'm going back into law school thinking, okay, when did I hear that bundle of sticks crap in real estate? Real estate's a bundle of sticks. What it really is like is torts. And if you want to just know what's what, here you are, and you're living in your wonderful neighborhood, and you have a gate around your home, around your backyard, and some hooligans, and I'm going to say the word hooligans, or just some random individual, whatever, jumps the fence, your fence, at 3 o'clock in the morning, jumps on your trampoline, and you end up getting sued because he breaks his leg on your trampoline at 2 o'clock in the morning.
We read that. Well, it was a garage case, right? Where the dudes, I don't know if you read that in law school. We read one where guys they're going to burglarize the home, and they get locked in the garage for like a weekend because the family was on vacation. They sued and won on negligence.
And everybody kind of went, what?
Yeah.
Da-da-da-da.
Same with the guy that decides to put his car on cruise control and think that before this existed, right? The self-driving cars back in the day. And
back when cruise control was as close as you got.
Sued him because he didn't understand what cruise control, they didn't explain it good enough that he didn't have to actually take a nap or couldn't take a nap while he was.
So you're hitting it on the head.
Yeah.
So we have all these, so we have this, so what we do have is a doctrine, and it's common law, and it's also codified. We have this doctrine. We got licensee, invitee. That's what we have. Those are the two elements of an individual jumping on Westover's trampoline. So Westover's law firm has a trampoline, and if you're invited, meaning your clients, it's a trampoline for your clients to go jump on, just for fun. Maybe you have one of them bouncy houses or something like that. And something were to go boo in the night with the bouncy house, you would be liable for that individual, but somebody creeps in, one of your, now it gets dicey. Now your cleaning people are there that night, and they bring their kids to bounce in the bouncy house while they're cleaning the place, and they get injured. Also, you're on the horn, because that's a licensee. Yes, that's a licensee. The other one of your clients, they're invitees, right? But the minute somebody just creeps in, breaks through your lock, and at the Westover law firm, and they, they have their quinceañera there while nobody's, I like that I just brought that out. I just pull it right out my hat just like that. They have their bar mitzvah there, and, somebody gets injured, what liability would you have? They're trespassing on your place. Most of the time, without mass, huge coverage of news and all that jazz, 99.9% of the time, that case is going to go in your favor. And so
logically, right?
Logically. And that is where we're at. When you boil down the cabbage, due process to those that are undocumented is literally they are not an invitee and they are not a licensee. And it is a civil case. You work civil law. Criminal immigration is civil. It's not criminal. And too many times it washes over each other. They bleed into each other, but it's so. So we have to at least understand the bundle of sticks as it is. It is a civil matter. The judiciary has El Zippo to do with it. I mean, that's been our biggest problem, you and I, literally, is we focus on the major problem, but we really haven't defined for the viewers why. The major problem is Congress. It's those that make the laws. That's our problem. That's where our muscles are weak. Congress is weak. It's the weakest branch of our government. I don't think I'm going to get an argument.
Not for me.
I don't think I'm going to get an argument from many. I don't know who in the world does squat in Congress anymore, and I think that it's about as worthless as it gets. So you have an overpowered judiciary and an overpowered executive, and that's what we live in right now. And we have a very wimpy on Popeye Congress that just kind of blows with the winds of change and doesn't do a whole lot. And it's really frustrating. So you've got this president right now that's trying to push envelopes like nobody's business, hoping that this whole Congress thing can maybe generate something. And you've got the judiciary that's overstepping too and doing so little bits at a time, little bites at a time. But they've been doing it for a long period of time. I mean, Roe v. Wade, I'm not making any friends out there in the world on that goes just a tippy toe to the left. And I'm not even talking extreme left. That was a terrible overstep. It was a terrible overstep. It was the bottom line. It was a bad law from Jump Street. We learned all about that back when it wasn't politically charged in law school. I mean, it was a bad, you've got the most left of all left professors at my place saying that's a crappy ruling. Period, end of story. You've got FDR that stacks the Supreme Court way back when, and he did 4 term limits. That's been in your parents' lifetime, or maybe their parents.
Yeah.
Because your parents are probably a bit younger.
Late 60s.
So my dad was born in 52, so it would have been, he's born right around that time.
My dad's 57, so.
And my dad was born in 52, so it's not 57. He'd like to be.
Yeah.
He would like to be 57. He'd like to pretend like he is. My mom could get away with.
No, I'm meaning my dad was born in 57.
Oh, okay, got it.
He's not 57. That would make him have me at 13 years old.
I know. I was going to say, man, your dad is
born in 57.
Your dad is a spry young buck when he had you. And I don't think you're the oldest.
I am the oldest.
Me too.
No, good. Makes sense.
It's daunting, yeah. It makes sense. He is too.
There you go. That one doesn't make sense.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Not one.
I have no idea, Reed.
Listen, pal. Most of our viewership, well, we do have subtitles. We have subtitles.
Oh, okay.
I know, right?
There you go.
That's
so
like
Reed
fancy.
gets subtitled there.
We get subtitled. Reed gets to have a subtitle. I don't know if his microphone's hot, though.
Reed, you're just not as opinionated. That's what I meant. I was giving both of us a criticism there of being as opinionated as we are, being the oldest. So you seem more level-headed. It was more a compliment than. But I don't know you well enough to know that. So
Reed is wise beyond his years.
There you go.
So
that's an oldest child.
He's a little bit of a probably there. He's a little bit quieter, and when he has an opinion, it's not quiet.
Okay.
But he doesn't have an opinion very often.
That's the difference probably between you and I.
And we tend to pick up opinions along the way.
A little bit more.
But we've been along the dirt road of life a little bit longer too. At some point, he's probably going to have a few more. A few. He's picking them up though, which hills to die on and which not to. So anyway, this due process thing, first we need to realize it's a civil matter. Secondly, we need to, it's not, they didn't get their rights read to them. It's not this. The court system in immigration is completely separate from the judiciary.
Yeah, so the only thing I'll correct on that is that there are civil elements to it, but there's also criminal elements to it too. So they've made statutes now, you know, they're processed federally, so it's not a state crime. You're right. There is no state crime that relates to immigration. It's always processed federally, but you got 1325 and you got some other federal statutes that you can prosecute illegal entries. And then the way they're doing it right now with some of the other, I mean, and there's always a mix between criminal and immigration in general, but you're right on the general aspect of where our judiciary sits. It doesn't fit. It almost feels like it doesn't fit in the civil arena or the criminal arena. And I've always argued that it should be an independent body in and of itself, but it sits under the DOJ, and so it is under the Department of Homeland Security technically. I'm assuming that makes it civil because there are not, like you said, when you go to a immigration hearing, you're not necessarily receiving a criminal jail sentence.
Right, you're not
like
given a lawyer to represent
and
you.
there's no public defenders available, and so more akin to civil than criminal.
Right. So it's just like the way I have it in my mind, it's like a board, and nobody likes the education board, and nobody likes the medical board, and nobody likes our bar, nobody likes anything to do with whatever. Right. That's basically what immigration is an over-bloated board. And so, it's under federal purview, and the DOJ controls pretty much all the strings because if you appeal, that's ultimately the last appellate.
Yeah, and I guess Supreme Court could.
They basically appeal to themselves. It's interesting.
It's weird. Yeah, because the Attorney General can actually overstep and overrule
all of it.
Yeah, appellate courts and different things like that.
So this Maryland man, which I hesitate to call it that, but it's a bad fight to pick for those that want to contest this thing. I mean, they can use it as an example of there was a step skipped. I'd be totally fine with that. But other than that, bad juju on that one. Just not a good hill to die on. However, it doesn't really matter. It's already
hard to tell on that one because there's
really,
so much news on both sides of it. Each side, it's like nobody knows who the guy actually is. One side's got a bunch of stories. The other guys say everything's doctored and the photos doctored and
who knows
the documents are doctored, and nobody really showing any concrete evidence of anything at this point. But yeah, it's an interesting.
Neither side is showing.
It's not as clean as probably the due process argument people would want it to be. I mean, hopefully. You'd rather have it be a guy with no law enforcement contact or anything.
You would want it to be somebody, but there again, they're looking at, and by they meaning those that want to contest every little thing, that want to just fight everything that Trump's doing or the current administration is doing. Frankly, at this point, they're going to find that there is a George Floyd that made a big impact on our country for a while. And there was a time where Rodney King, if he were still with us, would have really had a problem with the George Floyd thing. Now, Rodney King wasn't the same type of deal, but was. I mean, he was. I believe Rodney King was much more brutally. I mean, he didn't die because he wasn't, on death's doorstep prior to
as far
encounter.
As the actual
beating and
physical
gosh.
contact was a lot different. Yeah, I mean, you had one that unfortunately the knee was in the wrong place and still not
which
not
didn't
good,
even kill them,
but
which wasn't even the thing that killed him. Rodney was just blatant, out in the open,
beaten
and beat, and Rodney didn't. Look, I like his book. Interesting life that man led. He really turned it around for himself. Didn't really ask for having that big name that came along with that.
Yeah, he didn't. Nowadays, you feel like that situation is going to be publicized, or at least not even publicized. It would be monetized a lot different than he ever seemed like he did. Like, it didn't seem like that. He wanted the attention. Very much.
It didn't seem like he did. Does it? I mean, he did write a book, and he did, and he was an advocate, but he was never a victim, and he was never a. was never really a race hustler, so to speak. And I kind of respect him quite a bit for that. I mean, obviously there's a problem with, prejudice and racism. There is a problem. It's just not as magnified as we have made it in our media and our news cycle. And Rodney King being the only difference between he and Mr. Floyd there was he didn't die during the altercation, but also he wasn't on lethal doses he wasn't on death's doorstep already. When the police found him, they left him far worse than they found him for sure. George Floyd was likely going to meet that same demise regardless of the police officer arrest. I wonder where that case is going to go because now it seems all quiet. Crickets over there.
Yeah, I don't know enough to.
But we've got literally George Floyd statues, monuments, and I mean people talking about having a George Floyd Day. Now, I just find that to be, regardless of what you're trying to accomplish, not the right face, not the right message, it doesn't make sense to me because there are plenty of stories you and I see every day that's heart-wrenching but doesn't get that kind of run on the media.
But that's what they need, right? It's just a face. It's not necessarily.
So the Maryland guy.
Yeah, and that's the same thing here.
Obrego, or whatever his name is. What's his name?
Abrego Garcia.
Yeah, that guy. So he's just a face. He's just
he's just like
George Floyd.
And that's we know this on the legal side of things that maybe more than others is that Brown v. Board of Education, whoever the face is, that's just the litigant. That's just representing a class of people, and it happens to be the one where the facts fit good enough to be able to use that face. And it doesn't mean that was the model person or the person you want to champion. And like we talked about, maybe is not, I mean, ideally they would have wished it was somebody else, but the chips fell in line for his case to be able to use the facts to champion that issue. And so, yeah. And like I said, I'm sure on their end, if they had their druthers, they would have rather had it be somebody else on that plane that they could use to.
I agree. And the reality here for me is, look, we both know, I really feel strongly, and we both do, that reform and having a process that makes sense, top to bottom, that just makes sense, we're highly due for that in this country. We both know that. And yeah, that would include kind of jockeying the system a little bit. But, I mean, you don't really have to jockey it significantly for it to have a good process and procedures and the way that our immigration system runs in general. And I think at this point, no matter which side of the aisle you're on, as long as you don't get too far away from center, you're ready for that. I think the American people are ready for that. And I don't know if I could have said that 10 years ago. I don't know if I could have said that 20 years ago or 30 or 40 or 50. I don't know. But now I think the American people are ready for that, an immigration system that makes sense. If you and I go to New Zealand, which is where we're going to find your family, I go visit you there and I say, hey, Westover, let's sneak out tonight from the families there that are all sleeping, and let's go do some graffiti on the, I don't know, what's a site there that they're real proud of. I don't know.
Yeah, it's mostly their landscape stuff. So they will go paint one of their bridges or waterfalls or something like that.
Yeah, let's go horse something. Let's go hork something. Let's go jack some. There you go. We can do tipping. Yeah, we can go cattle tipping. Don't let Frank get you. Look, we go and break the law there. We have subjected ourselves to their law. Mm-hmm. So let's say that their law is like Somalia. They flog. So they take you and they flog you. Remember that case many years ago? Boy, are we aging ourselves here.
Is that Somalia, or was that? I felt like that was Libya or something like that.
I thought it was Somalia, but maybe. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stake a bet on it.
Yeah, but I know what you're talking about.
That it was somewhere, but and it was an American that got flogged, and both of American broke their law. We just paid a grundle of some sort of ransom to get Gaines. What's her name? That gal, that basketball gal out of Russia?
Brittany Grimes.
Grimes, yeah, there we go. We paid a grundle of money to get her. Griner, thank you. To get her out of Russia. And I'm thinking to myself, why? If you and I go to Russia, we probably ought to know their laws, because if we're going to go and break them, we're in trouble. I mean, we subjected ourselves to go to Russia. We're there for our own purposes. We're not there for, a state-sponsored anything. They didn't send us to Russia to go, we're not ambassadors or anything, right? So my point is here we have laws, well, and it's deteriorating. It's becoming conditional. We're bending and not breaking, and we're breaking and not bending, and we're just a little bit too all over the board. And we're doing it in the name of, frankly, Congress's lack of fixing a problem that they long should have fixed. The lawmakers' lack of making laws, and their lack or making too many laws over nothing. Too much legislation over nothing. I don't like these omnibus bills. I know I'm going a little bit this way, but it comes back. I don't like them because they're way too huge, and too many things slide in that so you can get the votes. There's a reason why they do omnibus now, because they need it to pass, and so they need it to be this big instead of this big, to where it passes.
They sneak a lot of stuff in.
And they sneak a lot of pork in. And so we end up with all of this Doge busyness down the road, finding this in this bill and this 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 and this, that this created this expenditure, and this created this, government organization, and it's just crazy to me to think that anything's ever going to get done, reasonably speaking. Like, we started talking before, I think the mics were hot, but maybe they were, and he can add it in. We started talking about the same age group. You were about in your early 30s, I was in my early 30s, and we got sick and tired of being sick and tired and fat. And we were fat, and we were not pretty, and not as capable as we would have liked to have been, and we looked at a picture and said, ooh, I'm filthy. So we both made an effort to turn that bus around. Well, we didn't make an effort to overcomplicate life. Actually, we cut a lot of stuff out of life for a goal, to be fit, to be capable, and to be healthy, right? I find this interesting. We didn't add things. We took things out. Same goes with government. Diet and exercise is going to work in government too. But where we have a lot of exercise in the executive and a lot of exercise on the judiciary, and frankly, most of which should not be happening, but it's only because of a lack of Congress doing their job. They become the fat kid.
And that's the biggest issue is that we've lost sight of what the roles are of each branch of government. Look, the president should be enforcing, administering, signing into law things that Congress creates.
Yes, not him.
Correct. And right now we're in and this has been going on for not just this term, but
the last four presidents.
Yeah, multiple administrations, both on the Republican and Democratic side, because of Congress's lack of movement, they've put it on themselves to make laws, which is not their job. And that's why, and then the judiciary gets involved because then they're trying to determine whether the president has authority to make laws, which he technically probably doesn't. But then, then there's the legal issues of what exactly is under the purview of the administration. What is executive orders? I mean, that executive order thing is, we had heard about it, but man, we've talked about this in other pods. Has it reared its head in the last 20 years like no other?
Yep.
And you're right. I mean, that's Congress sits and gets paid and does their thing, and that thing is not.
So let's say Westover, who I always want to vote for our governor first. I'd really like to see a good governor in Arizona. For once,
we'll see what happens this next.
For one, I don't
bit.
We've gone over that already. I'm going to keep burying myself on that one. But I'm voting for you. I'm penciling it in, and I'm going to have every one of our viewers pencil in Jesse Westover for governor. And you know what? 1,014 votes might do it.
Yeah, at this point, with
It might
where
do
we're at.
It might do it. This might be the greatest campaign launch ever in the history of campaign launches.
No, I got to accept that, even responsibility, right?
Oh, that's
Either
that's
way.
true. You would have to kind of accept it. We'd have to make you an offer you couldn't refuse.
That's exactly.
Because Arizona is ripe for really
Yeah, we're in
some
a
really healthy growth.
interesting spot.
Isn't it interesting? And your portfolio is looking a little bit better today than it was just the last time we saw each other.
This week's been better. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how this is crazy how fast these cycles
That's
go.
what. Yeah, that's what makes me crazy is that today's not.
Right.
So,
Right. Yesterday
and we've got
was.
these huge swings. It's.
Yeah.
I don't love that.
It's unsettling. It's unsettling. And I think that we're going to live through a little bit of unsettlement unsettled territory for a minute. I think the water's going to be choppy for a minute. I don't think it's going to be choppy for very long.
No, I'm not.
Look, at some point, it's really like the 80-20 issues they call them. And I kind of tend to think, okay, that's probably a fair assessment. There's 80% of the population really agrees strongly on certain ways, and 20% does not. I actually think it's more like 95-5. And I think that there's a 15 built in there for fluff. I really, really do. I think it's a 95-5, but whatever, 80-20 works too. It gets the mind wrapped around it. That a majority of a super majority of folks agree with you paying as much for a prescription made in the United States as somebody from the UK does. That makes perfect sense. Who on either side of this aisle is going to argue that? But yet they do.
Yeah.
That just barely happened. And yes, it was an executive order. And yes, it was probably RFKJ doing, behind all of that, because there's a very complicated structural, frankly, money laundering scheme going on with Pfizer and pharmaceutical and Johnson and the pharmaceuticals, the giants. And, it makes perfect sense to go, we're going to be paying what the least, what country pays the least, we're going to pay that. That makes complete sense. Okay. And that's an executive order, and probably one that might even survive.
Yeah, because pick winnable ones. That's what
Right.
I mean.
And
Great.
that was a great
You're
one.
not going to. I mean, the only thing that you're fighting against there is lobbyists and big money
Right.
pharmaceuticals that nobody. That's your There's
They
your
put
there's your
tail-
95.5
they put
right
their
there.
tail right
because
between their legs and went, okay, we'll
the
do
five's
this.
got money, and
Right.
we've talked about that in a previous pod of what moves the country in general is a lot of times where the
needle.
money is, but that's money with little support from the populace.
Right.
So I don't know how many people are really in support of how our healthcare system has been run, and especially how much we pay for
Right.
for medicine and
Medicine,
whatever else.
insurance
And,
alone. I mean, it's crazy.
anybody that lives in Arizona that walks down to Rocky Point and sees how much they're
Right.
paying for, like here's an example. I had my nephew years ago get stung by a scorpion at our house. And for whatever reason, when it's a young kid and it's a smaller scorpion, the venom's a little bit different. And he was foaming at the mouth. It was scary. And they had to administer, 3 vials or something of anti-venom, scorpion venom, which ended up costing my sister $15,000. I mean, some insurance paid for it, but it was expensive. Yeah, like $5,000 a vial. I talked to some guy in Mexico who had the same thing happen to his kid, drove down to whatever it was, Nogales, and got it for $300 a vial. So,
Right.
I mean, we know.
Same thing that Trump goes up there and says, I got a fat friend.
Yeah.
And he takes the fat shots.
it's
And he
crazy.
called me up, and only Trump gets away. It's hilarious. And he goes, I paid $88. I paid $1,400 in New York for the same exact thing.
Yeah, I've never understood the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical
Well, I
industry.
love the way Trump put it that way, because who can argue his logic on it? It's the same story as what you
And
just
that's
said.
a win, right?
It's
So
the same
that's
story that you just said. Your sister had to pay $15,000, or that's what the price tag was, and a friend across the border paid a fraction.
Yeah.
I mean, a fraction of a
Not
fraction
even,
of a fraction.
Not even close.
A very minor, for the same exact life-saving serum. Call it antidote.
They probably got it from Mexico from here. No, just kidding.
You never know. You never know. And so the point is it's obviously that he painted a picture that everybody went, and it's kind of funny, but then, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And so the left has a hard time with a counter argument. So do the pharmaceuticals. And so the pharmaceuticals, all they're going to do is retool. Okay, but this is step one. Next step is going to be, okay, let's talk about these patents here. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Because if you're going to want to see where the direction of this is going, you can look no further than where RFK is interjected. I mean, it's mainly here. And this is where he's kind of spending most of his time because he understands this juggernaut very intimately. And so that's pretty cool that he's, in the administration. So he comes in with that side piece for the pharmaceutical punch. And then he comes in with a Kristi Noem that has this set of skills, or with a Marco Rubio that can offload a ton of our state-sponsored, activities outside, outside the United States. I don't know why I pulled a brain fart there, a senior citizen moment.
Of what his job is?
Yeah, he's a secretary.
The secretary of Marco Rubio is the
Secretary of State, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay,
he's Secretary of State, and he's supposed to be running around all the world. And he's doing a good job. It appears that he's representing the United States well internationally. And so I kind of like Marco Rubio. I always kind of did. And I always hesitate with, politicians in general, because I don't think they do a whole lot of good. I don't really feel like Congress even knows how to shift a gear, how to drive a stick shift anymore. I don't think they know how to play a Newt Gingrich with Clinton. I don't think they know how to do that. And if it weren't for Gingrich, Clinton's presidency would not have been as powerful, and vice versa. Newt Gingrich would be a very obscure footnote in the history of our country, period. He wouldn't be anything. Now he's very well known, but deservedly so, and so was Clinton. And they had this back and forth, and they rolled this Congress along with the executive, and they worked hand in hand. They balanced a budget. That's the last time we've seen that. And so, in as much as I don't like to give, because Clinton's kind of a creep, but nonetheless, I got to give credence where credence is due. I mean, between Newt and Clinton, I feel, and various other, Congress sitting folks in that massive body there, that really did this country well. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to get back to. But how hard do you have to push them to where their constituents are tired of them?
Yeah, I mean,
and who's paying attention?
Yeah.
Like, who's even thinking, oh, I got to get rid of our senator. They're not doing squat. Well, I've been thinking this way for a while now. Like, how am I going to get Mark Kelly out of there? He's terrible. How am I going to get, we haven't had a good governor in this state. I will say Ducey was average. Well, what would you give him a grade at?
Yeah, I didn't mind. Business oriented.
Yeah,
our economy seemed to grow during that time.
I think we're seeing what he did right now.
I liked how he handled COVID, obviously, and so I didn't mind Ducey.
Yeah, I didn't mind Ducey. I think he was okay. And as far as Arizona governors go, he's probably up there, because we've had some real duds. We have Ev Meekum, we got Rose Mofford, we got.
Yeah, I've only been here 20 years.
We got the current one that's probably worse than anyone we've ever seen. I don't even know if she governs. And to be a governor of a state, that should be a full-time job, not one where you're doing a podcast, all day long, and you're going around glad handing. That should literally be a real job.
And I'll be honest with you, the state politics part of stuff I've followed less closely because I've been dealing with the federal government a lot. So,
you know what's fun to do though, and this makes it easier, I think, for somebody that probably has a challenging, a busy life, to be able to kind of gauge this. Look at states that succeed, that somehow are pulling ahead, like Florida. Somehow has really pulled some pretty heavy wins in the last long time.
Economically, or what?
Economically, population-wise, as far as how they handled tragedy there with with their hurricanes, and then also COVID too. Everybody had to handle that, but they handled it very differently. DeSantis is running that state very well. I feel like he's running it very pragmatically, like a business. And I mean, he took on Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, that took some stones, and he was anti-woke and anti-boys and girls sports and all that jazz. That state kind of stood alone. A lot of us, other red states, I'd say we're purple, but like Texas kind of just, did the Texas thing. They think they're gunslingers. It's so funny that they think that the 10-gallon hat makes them tougher. It's so interesting. Texans, subscribe. I'll teach you all about, where a real cowboy goes. So the point is then you've got California, then you got New York, and these states are not doing very well. Now, New York, I don't believe is in as bad a shape as California is. But California's in some pretty bad shape, and for an economy like that, and for its potential and its capability and its firepower, for it to be so anemic and needy is scary. And you look no further to who's the head of the organization in California, and he just so happens to want to be our next president. And I'm a little bit concerned about anything at this point because you never know, right?
Yeah, I guess you don't know.
Because, I mean, that's basically putting Trudeau 2.0 in the White House. And now that a president does what the presidents of the last 5 have done,
it's scary.
It's a scary thought. And so I think that we need a Congress interplay. And I actually think Trump would love that interplay that Clinton and Newt Gingrich had. And they were on 2 different sides of the aisle, lest people forget. Newt Gingrich is a Republican House Speaker, and Clinton was a Democrat president. And they worked hand in hand and hand in hand in hand. And that Congress served Clinton, and Clinton served the Congress. And it really worked out well for the American people. Now, there might be a lot of people that can't get over a lot of personal issues that they have with the Clintons or whatever they may have heard and whatever's on the news cycle whenever it goes. But you can't take that away because we got to see that with our own 2 eyes. Was it perfect? No, but it looked real good, though. It looked good on film.
Yeah.
You're looking back at our game film. That's probably one of America's highlight times. Not a lot of sex appeal to what was going on there, but the economic growth and the economic capability of our country was very balanced. And I like that. Let's go with, so when we come down to due process, most people need to understand that when it comes to immigration, it doesn't really spill over into that unless we've allowed it. So we've kind of created all these laws that kind of tend to sometimes be enforced, sometimes not. And that's because it's all under a purview that's different than the judiciary, that's different than any other issue. And so just to get a good handle on due process, they don't really have due process. And then after a certain period of time with residency, this is interesting to me. With 5 years after residency, there is some, due process starts to appear a little bit.
There's traditionally we've had due process in all this situations in the sense that the expedited removal is really the only process where that doesn't take place, where there's not some kind of judicial oversight, which for those that don't know what expedited removal is if you're caught on the border.
You're just kicked out right away.
Kicked out right away. If you're caught here in the United States, less than 2 years in the United States, you also, that wasn't enforced before, but it's being enforced now. It's on the statutes. There's not much we can do about that. And then if you have a
do you not like that one?
Judicial order. So I don't like any time the government plays games with things, and there is a little bit of game playing going on with expedited removal, in the sense that I have zero problem with we had a long time of what they called catch and release, right? So that was just voluntary returns. You didn't get an actual deportation order. And I think expedited removal now, as the consequence of coming over illegally to the United States, has, in the long run, it's going to curb the amount of people that come to the United States because the consequence is bigger. Because once you get an expedited removal, it's on your record. You're basically not able to come back to the United States. If you get caught here, it's immediately removal. It's prosecuted criminally with a reentry that you've done those types of cases federally. And so the consequences are more grave when you have an expedited removal. So I'm fine with that. What this new 2-year enforcement thing?
Well, it's not new.
The enforcement of it is different now. And what I mean by the game that's sometimes played is that there were people that were put in the system to fight their asylum cases that, right or wrong, were given a process where they were determined that they had a credible fear and that were given the opportunity to fight their asylum case. And I'm not taking issue of whether that was processed in the right way, but it was what happened. And when you have individuals that suffer from this, that's where I always try to put a personal, face to some of these processes. And what happens now is that the government is terminating those NTAs, which sounds like a great thing. So in context, that would mean they're taking away the charges, the deportation charges. But to do that, it's not a favor. They're doing it so that they can now initiate expedited removal proceedings. So that's fine. I would have rather them just handle that at the border than letting somebody in and then coming to their house a year and a half later and say, by the way, you don't have court anymore and you're gone.
And the reason why I'm kind of wondering, I'm kind of wondering what to do.
And remember, these are licensees, these are invitees.
Yeah, invitees, right?
Because these are people that were screened already and invited in. So when we talked about your little analogy on the beginning of it, this isn't not your case of a trespasser. This is somebody that was presented at the border, invited in, right or wrong. I'm not making an argument there, but given a license to be here, and then that license taken away because we didn't like what the other president did.
They're playing on the bounce house, and we go and pull the plug on and say, get
sorry.
out of here. Yeah, sorry, you're invited.
The last owner of this that sold you this bounce house is no longer here, and so
that's a
see
good
you
way
later.
to put it. Yeah,
and that's tough. I mean, and I get that there are people that are going to say, "So what? You don't belong here." But these families have moved their entire lives here, and so there is an individual family matter to this. And again, they are licensees, they're invitees, and so.
Now let's talk our language, Westover. Now let's talk our language. This week, all right. So we got P. Diddy I'm going to go all over the board on this one. And there's all sorts of unspeakable holy crap coming out of that court.
I heard a little bit.
Me too.
Some of the testimony.
And just a little bit is like, oh.
Yeah, no.
It's like, oh my gosh. So yesterday, maybe the day before, I don't know when this pod's going to drop, so it doesn't matter at that point. A couple of fellas come in. They may have come from your place. I don't think they did. I don't know how they found me. I could smell the Drakkar from my office before they got through the front door. Wearing their fancy jeans that have all them, thingy-majiggers on the pockets, the back pockets. They don't look like our usual clientele. And before I even heard them say a word or even looked at them, I said, Cuba or Venezuela? You were here. Anyway, Cuban or Venezuelan? Yep, Venezuelan. Anyway, this dude yanked his girls to his admission, and I've got him looking for charges anywhere we could find him, yanked his girlfriends by the hair, choked her, beat her, and left her, and she was from Peru, and she likely disappeared. And I'm not saying, ooh, this isn't on 60 Minutes, which is, I guess, bullcrap now, but it's not on a much more reliable storytelling source. What is that, the Dateline? No, I'm not saying they had anything to do with it. She just disappeared because she's undocumented here, and she's from Peru, right? And Reed finally finds the case. This is a case that would be a felony 2 strangulation case, and it would be a deal breaker for this fellow who's here on asylum. and has court in August. So he will be visiting you soon, if it has not happened already. And so Reed comes traipsing in with a misdemeanor domestic violence. Given what this dude had just told me had happened, and the police were there, they detained him, they also released him, that would not have happened for 99.99999% of everybody that's come through our doors ever. So our folks that are coming here that we're used to representing are basically those that we share a border with. Okay? Those that we don't share a border with, they're getting different treatment. Like, people are backing around them. They are, this Maryland man thing, all this crap is making a difference with the way we enforce our law against this. Because this fellow, in reading the police report, I mean, this went up to Superior Court and then dropped back down to Phoenix Municipal Court.
And you think it's because he was Venezuelan?
Yes. I think he's here because he's a ICLE. Yeah, he's an what do they call it? ICLE or a protected yada yada blah blah blah.
Oh, his TPS?
He got asylum because he was in trouble over there in Venezuela, and he's a governmental refugee or whatever we want to call it. But I don't think they wanted to play around with it. Then there's step number 2. Where's the victim?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I understand that, but I still would have seen this being charged felony with the state, 100% of the time.
That's weird. I don't.
But now that I've got this person that's sitting on a fence of asylum, I've seen this, and this was really right in your face, ugly, but I've seen this happen across the board to where a lot softer treatment is going on with Arizona's enforcement, with Arizona. So you've got police officer that sent this to Superior Court for charging, and a charging attorney from Superior Court right here in Maricopa County, whoever was the charging attorney on this one, looked at it, saw that it's an asylum seeker, and saw that, everything's in order there, saw that he's also on the government payroll for, whatever they get for during their asylum times, and boom, kicks it over down to Phoenix Municipal and takes what would have been a felony 2 to a misdemeanor, a 3rd-degree misdemeanor.
Why would that matter, whether they were seeking asylum?
I don't know, but I've been seeing it more often than not. Like, if you're Latino and you get pulled over and you're driving drunk, and now all of a sudden you're in immigration hold, that I'm still seeing, and I'm seeing a lot more of that right now than we have in the last 10, 15 years. That we're used to. I've never seen anything like this, to where not only are they not, they didn't have to pay a bond to get out. They're not in custody. I'm not getting visited from their friends or family. And I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like the tippy-toe around the issue, because you break the law, you break the law.
Yeah, I've never seen.
And let's see it.
I'll
processed.
be honest with you, I haven't seen any.
You're about to.
Difference of, and I don't understand what.
I mean, I'm sure
what the difference would be. I don't understand why seeking asylum, which has nothing to do with the state.
All I know is it has zero to do with the state. All I know is it's the only thing I can conjure up, because I read he had the police report. I mean, he had a ton of things. Not only was he swimming in Drakkar before he came in here, but he had a pretty good size, amount of paperwork. And I was able to sit there and read it and go, holy, I mean, this Form 4 was ugly.
Yeah,
and,
no,
and
I'm
for it
not
to
arguing. I just
for
don't,
it to zip down
I don't know what
to misdemeanor world, and it likely, here's the pathetic part, is I'm going to get it dismissed in misdemeanor world because they don't have a victim.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have less problems with that. My attorneys here at the Arizona law firm are going to get it dismissed, and they're going to have less problems with that than most other cases of similar nature. And I don't know why everybody's thinking it's a hot potato.
I haven't seen that on the, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I
Yeah,
have
neither
not,
one
I've
of us
not
have seen this.
nor have I seen it recently. I haven't seen any difference in plea deals from a U.S. citizen to a or an asylum seeker or anything like that. So I don't know what that circumstance was, or if you've got somebody that's sensitive to those issues, but
I don't know.
I don't know.
All I know is it's offensive. When I looked at it, I went, oh my gosh. And I just told the kid, I mean, I just said, look, dude, you're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very fortunate for you because, I mean, at first it was a $25,000 case, and it went all the way down to just, no, it's a $5,000 case, and Brian's going to go in there and tear the place down with it, and you'll live to
see another day.
To see another day, because the likelihood of this sticking is very unlikely, given the fact that there's no victim, in my opinion. Maybe she surfaces, and then I'll change the game. But at the end of the day, we have a significant bias, and I believe that the Latinos in general, the bigger part of the population of those that are here undocumented, are really not liking this whole asylum thing, not liking this, all the newcomers, the whole bunch of newcomers. That's been my general vibe to it. What do you think on that one?
I mean, I honestly think that this problem's not going to exist as much in 5 years from now as it does now. One, because they've closed up that process of entering into the United States. And two, all of these people are starting to understand that. So Venezuela gets all the attention, but really I've got just as many, if not more, Mexican asylum seekers, which never happened in the past, as I do Venezuelan asylum seekers. And Venezuela actually has way more of a chance. A Venezuelan has way more of a chance to win their asylum claim, because if anybody actually has read the news, then Venezuela's in a world of hurt, and there are probably, at least maybe a half of them that have legitimate asylum claims that were
state
there.
sponsored.
And the thing with asylum that people don't understand is asylum really is persecution from either directly or indirectly from the government, not just because you've had a problem with your neighbor. And that's what most of the Mexicans come up with. Oh, what's your asylum?
It's a cartel.
My neighborhood's really dangerous. That's not an asylum claim.
Right.
That's a credible fear. That's what they let you in for, but that's not going to win an asylum claim. My Venezuelans, my Colombians, they have legit they're bringing up evidence, and they're bringing up stuff that actually can win an asylum claim. So
same with Cubans.
But but the asylum system in general was misunderstood for the last 5 years, because it was advertised in these Latin countries as, this open border. And we've talked about that. And that was the wrong message to send, because you had a lot of people who are good people who just understood wrong and thought that, oh, this is my opportunity to come to the United States. And they are invitees. But they're going to lose their cases. I mean, a lot of them are losing their cases right now. And they're going to eventually be, unfortunately, not only are they going to be sent back, but they're going to be deported on top of that, which they wouldn't have been before. So the consequences are pretty grave for what they're going to be doing. And, it's going to close itself out as that was the first step that needed to be. I have zero problem with what we did there. The way we're doing it is weird, because we're kind of pulling at both ends. Fire all judges so that this process is really slow, but try and make this process really fast. Like if we would have just done it the way that the system's set up, hire more judges, streamline the asylum process. You're welcome to, I mean, right now they're asking us for expedited hearings. And if we choose expedited hearings, it allows them to get a work permit. But there's this, balance between that, because if you choose an expedited hearing and you lose, you're 3 months away from having a decision made. And so as an attorney, you play with those games of whether the work permit's worth it, or waiting out the time. Yeah. And so it's gonna loophole back, or it's gonna loop its way back to being kind of regular. But like I said, the Trump administration is just kind of it's schizophrenic, because I think what the goal is the right goal, but you're doing it in a weird way. Like your thought is, let's take away the immigration system and the due process of it, instead of just let's take what's in place, let's make it better, let's streamline it, let's get it done, and then we're going to find that we're back in the same situation. But
Telling you, the IIE program needs to be implemented yesterday.
I mean, that's another one. I mean, the registration thing that the government supposedly put into place. I don't know how that's all gonna be enforced. That was a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't either. Look, I know that this is how this particular president works. Is done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. And so he'll go get something done, cross that off a list, and once it starts rattling and squeaking, he'll, all right, put some things in place that bolster whatever was done. So
it's an interesting strategy.
It's a builder's mentality.
Yeah, and I mean it's an interesting strategy because I think for things like pharmaceuticals where everyone's on board and we don't have we're not challenging constitutional issues, we're not messing with well-established things, then win, great, do it fast. I think when you do it with everything, I think that it can be challenging.
I agree that when we were talking last, that just seemed to be just fire hose and let's go. Like we're not even. But I do believe that they were. You fire guns ever? You know what the tracers are? Mm-hmm. I believe that he shot every tracer he has, where the tracers leave that trail, to where here's where I'm going. Here's where I'm going. Here's where I'm going. Now, it's not for everybody, and it's certainly not for the weak constitutionally, or meaning the weak. You have both regard, I guess it's true. It's not for everybody, but the reality is he's got 4 years, and the real reality is he has 2 guaranteed, and he has 4 that are there in front of him. And so I see the need for speed. I understand that he's trying to tackle and undo and then also grow all at the same time. And it's almost near impossible for me to get my head around how in the world is this all going to, but yet then I see a dovetail, and then I see a dovetail, and then I see some loop closed, and I see another loop closed, and I see another loop closed, and they start to close. These are called wins. They start to do well, and it's like, oh, all right, hold on. I'm going to sit back for a minute and just watch and see how this immigration thing goes on, because Holman is out there, boom, 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 but we don't see him in the news as much now.
No, it's Stephen Miller that's now.
And so now we got a Miller's, the Steve Miller band cruising around. And so for a minute, but it's interesting to see that the border's been closed since January. I mean, we have a very small problem with those that are leaking through.
So this is not even a political statement. This is more a publicity, self-marketing statement. If I were Trump, I'd be doing it just a tiny bit different, in the sense that he's having wins, but he's not button those up and really publicize those wins and really get your base to start to support you, instead of he's getting wins and he's just moving on to the next target, but he's doing the wins so speedily that they're getting reversed. Like, I don't want this win reverse. Courts say, no, that was not, you didn't do it the right way. And so it's a quick flash in the pants of, oh, it looked good today, but the markets responded tomorrow and said, this is crappy. Actually, this is not what you thought. And so I would rather, like on the tariff thing, like if that's your focus, make it your focus for a month, button it down so it can't be reversed, go through the procedures that it needs to go. And I don't mean the bureaucracy of things, but just make sure that we're fitting legalities of it, and then publicize the heck out of it as a win, instead of all these, like you said, all the tracers out at the same time, and we can't follow. And maybe that's his strategy, is we can't follow one way or the other, and he's going to take the 2 wins out of the 20 and be happy with it. But I don't know, to keep that support going, so the numbers don't keep going, like start celebrating those wins and really focus on.
I can't disagree. I do think the news cycle and everything is so fast that, we've already forgotten the border's been closed since January.
Yeah, like take that as your immigration win. Yeah. Like the amount of deportations or the amount of border entries, I guess, would even be mine. The deportation stuff doesn't even bother me as much as the amount of entries to the United States, curbing that illegal entry. That's a win. Yeah. So and
I just brought that up, and because I remembered, in January, it says, it's like 90 whatever percent less than the January prior, and it's kind of like that's a win.
So
That's a
to
big
publicize the
win.
heck out of that instead of saying, so it's like if, as a coach, as a basketball coach, let's celebrate Thursday's win instead of continuing to talk about championship 4 months down the road. So for immigration wise, it's like, okay, celebrate the win instead of continuing to say we're removing everybody, we're deporting everybody, and you're going to the ultimate goal, which is there's a lot of logistics that go into that.
Well, if you listen
so celebrate the little stuff.
I agree with that, and if you listen to the administration on this, if you even just pay half attention to it, it's like it's not necessarily a conservative approach that they're about. They're literally, they would like to have a system to where it just, things get done quickly, rapidly, and efficiently, and fairly. And okay, that's noble. Okay, that's good. I mean, that's the way they all talk. That's the way you can tell it's the viewpoint of Trump. However, there's ugly to this. There's a lot of ugly to this. And so there is no pretty, perfect scenario that, no child left behind. Yeah. Great in theory.
Business running a country like a business is great in theory, but there's people. Right. This is a country, not a business, and so there's
need to be on that 80% side for most of those things, like this particular immigration. That's why I said I think it's ripe for something that might not have been even remotely plausible 20, 30 years ago. But I think today.
I know you have this optimism that there is going to be some actual reform or change that comes that gives
it. The Congress.
It's even with the tariffs. I mean, we talked about those a few weeks ago. I mean, we've seen the back and forth with the tariffs. We've seen no back and forth on immigration. It has been full bore, deport everyone. Like they publicized this whole big raid that they did in Tennessee that that mayor got involved and obstructed and whatever else.
What is that mayor thinking, by the way?
Neither here nor there. I was looking at the data that they were saying, okay, we arrested 192 nasty people. Well, when the data came back, it was like 90 people had some kind of misdemeanor crime or maybe something different, and 165 people had zero. But they publicized the heck out of the criminal part of it. But really, 75% of it was just ancillary stuff. Right. And so I get the machine, but like I said, we're doing stuff really fast, and immigration's not giving any, and that's just my world, but there's no back and forth right now. There's no give and take on that. I hope optimistically you do, because I'm not going to back off if you're deporting 15 million people that run the bottom of our economy, you're going to have a hard,
I agree. And especially
a hard country.
And especially, check this out though, especially when our industry, and we are definitely...
Yeah, now we're bringing industry back here with nobody to do the work.
And we're trying to export out.
So we're fighting the tariffs and the immigration system.
I'm not going to tackle that head on, but we can fight that head on. But we are definitely bringing more industry in. Arizona is a prime example of this. I mean, we are kicking some tail and taking some names as far as we got chip manufacturing. Look, when you become governor, open up all our bloody... Okay, number one, he's going to get into your ear about nuclear energy, but I'll let him do that one because we definitely need a lot more of that. But I'm going to be in your ear about, all right, let's open up all the mines, cut all the red tape, let's roll. Arizona was is a very rich mineral